Mel Riley was given the target one time about the Civil War, and he had the PSI experience, what they call bilocating, and he bilocated onto the battlefield. And when he got out of his session, he was coming back from the building where we did the remote viewing over to the office building, and somebody said, "Did you cut yourself? What happened?" He had blood on his shirt, and it wasn't his.
Welcome back. I'm here again with Lyn Buchanan. Lyn, welcome back, my friend.
Well, thank you. I keep thinking you're going to get tired of me pretty soon, but good to be back.
No,
this is an honor for me. It really is.
Well, I'm sure a ton of people ask you to interview, and you have to be turning down people. You have to be turning down people.
Oh, I try to be careful.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, because you're on like Mishlov's show and you're on this one, and I don't think I've seen you on any other ones. And Mishlov is, much more impressive than I am. So,
he's amazing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a good man. So I don't know him personally, but he just exudes that kind of.
I know him personally. Curiosity. What you see on the screen, he's in person. He's nicer. He's more congenial. He's a real person. He's a mensch, He's really.
Well, not to take us on a complete tangent, but when did you meet him? And what were the circumstances under which you met him?
Met him at IRVA, International Remote Viewers Association. I had an interview with him, and we just became friends. And once he moved to Albuquerque, then every now and then, I'm up in Albuquerque and I say, "Hey, I'm coming by." I say, "Well, come by," and we don't always film, Sometimes you just come by, go to dinner and all that. It's nice.
Yeah, and he's been covering this topic.
Oh, yeah.
At least since the early 90s, probably long before that.
But he's the only person actually who has a parapsychological degree, college degree in that.
And he had to do a lot to get, because it's at Berkeley, right, that he went?
I think so, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about dreams and dream influencing and trying to understand the mechanisms of it, whether or not it's real, whether or not there was any chatter about the Russians doing it during your time as a remote viewer. So all sorts of different topics. So we'll just start with, is there something behind this, or is it just a flight of fancy?
No, it's real. It's not hard to do if you know what you're doing and know how to do it. It's very real. It's something that, I think would cause fear in people, probably with good reason, but it's not good or bad. It's like anything else. The person doing it may be good or bad. But I know, for example, an athlete has an accident, is in traction and all this, and is taken out of the sport for a year or so, and is wanting to give up on life and everything else. It's very easy to access them at a subconscious level and change that despondency to a challenge. Get them going again, and get them out of the misery they are, and to help them. One time in New Orleans, we were called. General Stubblebine and his wife and I went down there. This guy was in a coma, and they asked if we could have a remote viewer get him out of his coma. And so we went there to the house and worked him out of the coma. And you can do that. And that's happened a couple of times. So, it can be very good. and very useful. You could also, if you were that kind of person, you could also probably ruin somebody's life. And so, it's not who do you give a gun to? You give a gun to the good guy. Okay.
Yeah, you don't give, or I mean, not even, it could be not even good or bad. You don't give a pistol to a monkey, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. And so, the method is there. Now, in the medical applications that we teach you how to access a person at the different micro personalities within their subconscious mind.
When the United States and China clash, the world will never be the same, especially when forces beyond reality threaten to intervene. What if the United States went to war with the People's Republic of China? How would these rivals fight for supremacy on land, sea, air, and across the stochastic streams of time? What wonder weapons would be unleashed? What horrors would emerge from the irradiated sludge of the South China Sea? What heroes would rise and forever change the course of history? Tread into the deepest and darkest dimensions of the multiverse, gaze through a kaleidoscope of fractured realities, and bear witness to the disturbing visions of World War III from today's greatest minds in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Weird World War, China. Available now from Baen Books at baen.com.
To help them work out their medical problems. Now, with the medical applications courses and the work we do in medicine, somebody loses an arm, you're not going to grow it back. Come on, there are things. And there are a lot of things that are illnesses that you're not going to do anything about. You can't help in any way. But if it's an emotional illness, or if it's a real illness that they have weakened themselves to through their emotional state or through their thinking and all that, or if it's a religious or spiritual illness, and there are a lot of those, you can access them at their subconscious level and help them work their way through it. My own father had an accident, was in a coma, and I helped him come out of the coma, and it worked. So the thing is that once you learn how to access a person at their subconscious level, you can deal with them at that level, and you can do a lot of good or you can do a lot of bad. I prefer you do good. But, you were talking about dreaming. When a person is in the dream state, usually their defenses are somewhat back up again. And so if you can catch them when they're asleep, but not in a dream state, then almost all of their defenses are down, and you can really have an effect. Now, in a dream state, you can sort of guide their dreams. In fact, when people dream at night, I kind of suspect, how the dreams will go crazy all of a sudden? I kind of suspect it's like your cell phone there, okay? Here you are dreaming along. Somebody drives by in a car and they're arguing with their spouse, and all of a sudden your dreams go bad. I think what just happened with your cell phone is a perfect example of that. So, when you are in a dream state, you're very influential. And in fact, the Russians often really took advantage of this. The Russians, we say we got the remote viewing from the Russians. Actually, the Russians sort of abandoned the remote viewing, and they went into what they call Dali hypnosis, and it means remote hypnosis.
Can you spell that, the first part?
If you anglicize it, it would be Dahlnee.
Dalny. Okay.
Dalney, yeah. It means distant, yeah. So remote hypnosis. And when Carter went over to Russia on that last time he went over, there was a team of those that followed him and were at all of his presentations. And when Carter came back from Russia that time, he was not really capable of making a presidential decision for the rest of his term in office. He had miserable time trying to make decisions and all that. They got to him. Yeah.
And how did that work? Do they do that while they're in a conscious state, or do they go to sleep and do it? Or is it a mixture of both?
You can do it either way. It's easier when you're asleep. Yeah.
Easier when the target's asleep, or
when the target's asleep. Yeah. Yeah.
What about the, I wouldn't say attacker, but the influencer?
It's a definite organized process that you go through. Yeah.
But is it like you're in a semi-conscious state, or do you go to sleep with the intention, or is it
for the Russians? For the Russians, I'm not sure how they do it. In the remote viewing and the derivative of that for the Ingos 1 derived remote influencing, you don't go into an altered state. You're wide awake. You can sit at a table with your monitor and smoke and joke and, and do your session, but you're conscious, you're awake all the time. There's no going into a trance or anything like that. Yeah.
And then how was it developed? Like, how did they determine whether or not it worked?
We were forbidden to do it in the military unit. Okay. There is a part of the Ingos 1 process that leads into remote influencing. Ingo never taught it or never mentioned it to the military and all that. It was not used in the military, and in fact, they had a strict edict. You will not use this in active mental work, only passive mental work. We only want you to collect intelligence. So they flat out told us, you will not do active mental work, making somebody do something and all that. And so in the unit, we didn't do that. But there were things that happened. And I came to the point one time where I realized that you can't actually successfully remote view a target without having an influence on it in some way, very minor influence. And so I started developing the remote influencing, and, we started working on it. I developed almost all the techniques for it. I don't teach it to people because I don't trust people with it, but it works and it's not hard to do. And the movie, you can actually stare at a goat and kill it.
But it has consequences, though, too, right? The person who actually did that, right? It messed them up.
And all of this, you're a part of the collective conscious. So you hurt somebody in the collective conscious, it's collective. You're going to hurt yourself. You help somebody, you're going to help yourself. And
I got a weird story about that, Lyn. I got a weird story about that.
Go ahead.
It's weird. So there was somebody who harmed me. Like, if there was one person I would put as the worst human being I've ever encountered on the planet, I would put this person in that bucket. Okay. Yeah. Even to this day, 2 years after the fact, if I saw this person bleeding on the side of the street, well, I'm not going to say that because I get myself in trouble. I had, there's like a fly or, in my office flying around. And I know enough about how flies, their flight patterns that literally if you want to kill one with near 100% accuracy, you just put your hand above them and come down, right? Because when they fly up first, right? Mm-hmm. Except when I did that, I would imagine it was this person. So I would hit the table with such force and anger, think like the entire room would shake.
Oh, yeah.
So then I got more flies. And I would continue to do it with anger, rage, and complete and utter malintent. Then more flies, and more flies, and more flies. And to me, it felt like I was playing with something I should not, like.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to go into things that I don't know if exists or not, but if there were such a thing as like death magic or, whatever you want to call it, there was some malign influence that I was playing with inadvertently.
Oh, sure.
And as soon as I realized it, I stopped killing flies altogether. If I have a fly, I'll kind of, this is weird, but I'll kind of ask, hey, why don't you just land on me? I'll take you outside.
Yeah.
And that's worked from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. It could be completely coincidental, but I definitely felt there are forces that, just like Wi-Fi, we don't see Wi-Fi, we don't see, but there are signals bouncing around us at a high frequency, in order for us to even have this discussion. So, to your point, when you're talking about this collective conscious killing goats, it was almost like there was something that was like, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, right?
Well, the sergeant that killed the goat evidently went through the death experience with the goat, and it just basically pretty well ruined his life. Yeah.
Is he still around, or has he passed?
I don't know. He sort of just disappeared, and nobody. I think he went AWOL. That's what I heard. And
you can't come back.
Never been heard from since. Yeah.
To advertise on Through a Glass Darkly, email throughaglassdarkly@gmail.com.
Yeah, so I don't know what to make of that, but some of these experiences you should catalog and just take them for what they are.
Sure.
Could be complete coincidence. Flies multiply. That's just the way they work.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But there was something dark about it that's hard to put your finger on. But aside from that was probably the darkest thing that in that realm that I probably would have gone into, and it was completely.
Well, I'm glad you learned from it. That's the main thing.
Yeah, but it's a creep. It was just weird. It wasn't.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anyone was hurt either. I don't know what happened. I don't know if anything happened on the other end.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I have no way of knowing that. But knowing that person, I wouldn't be too upset by it. But
one of the unit remote viewers that you have interviewed one time said, "This gives you a God complex." And I said, "How can you say that? I've never been more humbled by anything in my life than this, than what I've learned from the remote viewing. Just made me realize how small I am and how much could be given to me, how much." And in fact, one time, I always tell the story about when they blindsided me with the target of Jesus.
I don't know if you told me that story. You may have. I can't remember.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll tell it again, but the one I don't usually talk about is when they blindsided me with a blind tasking on God. And
I don't think you have told me this one.
I usually don't tell people this. When I did the session, I had what was called a PSI experience, where it gets so intense you can't tell you're not at the target. The room around you disappears and everything, and your mind only sees what's at the target. And I had that experience, and I was in a completely dark area, and there was light shining down from above, but I couldn't see where it was coming from. It was just a circle of light. And so I said, what do you want here? And basically at one point I said, well, what can I ask you for? And the answer was, I've given you everything you ever need. anything else I give through you, not to you. And the session was over, just like that. And I came out of the session. What the hell? What was that?
It
And
wasn't hell.
yeah, they opened the envelope and said, "You just talked to God." No, I think he talked to me. Whatever, But that could have been, I don't know, a bad session with all my imagination going. But I know that it changed my attitude toward basically everything. I mean, I have everything I need. And anything else, I'm here for giving to others. And that's the way I live my life now.
Yeah, it sounds like it was a humbling experience. And they said you also had you also view Jesus Christ too, or was it just God?
Yeah,
Catholics would say it's the same thing, but
one of my fortes was to get into people's minds and get their plans and intentions and do personality profiles. Plans and intentions, you get into their mind and you get their thoughts and all that. Personality profile, you remote view them and you sort of stand back and observe everything, observe how they act, how they think, how they react, and all that, so that you can wind up making a personality profile of them. And so I've been given Saddam Hussein over and over and over, and other bad guys too. And I went into the director and I said, hey, give me Bozo the Clown, give me Mother Teresa or something, but give me a break. And he said, you're a soldier. Get out of my office, do your damn job. And, all right, And a couple of weeks later, there was a lull in the planetary activity, the political activity and all that. And they said, okay, we're doing plans and intention. We're doing a personality profile. And it was a sealed envelope. And I started viewing the person and I thought, this is not a bad guy. And I said that right at the first. I said, I think you got the wrong guy. This isn't a bad guy. And my monitor said, hey,
it is what it is.
Ask for, do it, And so I went ahead and on this one, I had another PSI experience where I was standing in front of this guy. And when I came out of the session, my summary of that session was, whatever evil you think this guy did, he didn't do it. This is a good guy, But I came out of that session just feeling sort of a glow, that I'd been in the presence of somebody that I totally respected everything else. And what the guy looked like was this short little Jewish guy in just a suit, modern suit. And basically what I started feeling like, man, compared to this guy, I'm dirt, I'm pig slop. And he let me know, he said, whatever evil you've done, I've seen worse. Whatever good you've done, I've seen a whole lot better. You are who you are, and that's okay. And came out, the monitor opened the envelope, and the director had handwritten on a piece of paper, Jesus. And that's when
why was he in a suit?
He's modern. I don't see Jesus as some dude that runs around in robes and
flip-flops or sandals, right?
He's every day. Yeah, but he was in modern clothes and just looked like a short little Jewish guy with, you could tell Jewish.
Wow. All right. Going back to, they kept assigning you Saddam Hussein. So we were talking about Jeffrey Mishlove. I think he tells this story that there was an occasion, trying to remember if this is right, where a woman walked in while you were remote viewing Saddam Hussein and your eyes had turned brown.
Yeah, you can have physical responses to, when you have that PSI experience, you can have physical responses, especially if you're doing the plans and intentions, because that way you're basically melding with them at the subconscious level. And this is always dangerous for a remote viewer, because when you separate, you don't want to take them back with you, because you don't want to
kind of taint your consciousness in some way.
You don't want to take Saddam Hussein back to your wife and kids. Come on, And so we have protection. The remote viewing process that you learn, the CRV, is a large percentage of it is not how to remote view, it's how to protect yourself when you do it. And so anyway, yeah, but there can be, in those cases, there can be things, your voice will change, your accent will change, sometimes physical changes, yeah. And eyes turning different colors, yeah.
There's that story with you, but have there been any other such reported instances where somebody else had some sort of a physical change?
Talked about, but not reported, and certainly not reported officially, Mel Riley was given a target one time about the Civil War. And he had the PSI experience, what they call bilocating. And he bilocated onto the battlefield. And when he got out of his session, he was coming back from the building where we did the remote viewing over to the office building. And somebody said, "Did you cut yourself? What happened?" He had blood on his shirt, and it wasn't his. He hadn't bled or anything else, but he had blood on his shirt, and it was not his blood. So he had evidently apported. Apported is where you teleport mentally. You teleport, that's electronically. Apporting is where you do it mentally. He had evidently apported some of that blood spatter from the battlefield back with him when he came back.
And there was no one else that in the office that could have cut themselves or anything like that?
No.
That raises another question. Apportations. Are there any phenomena like that associated with remote viewing?
The Chinese were very much into that. They were doing studies on that, been doing the studies that for a long time, apporting things, making things disappear in one place and another place. They started it out by having needles inside of jars and simply apporting the needle out of the jar onto the table, a sealed jar. And they got pretty good at it. There are films out showing them doing it, yeah.
Will you actually see it disappear and then reappear, like the needle?
You don't see it disappear and appear. All of a sudden, you see it in a different place. But it's not a thing where if it disappears and then it appears somewhere. It's just there and then it's there. And I've seen these things happen. It's the mind over matter thing.
How long did it take them to build up to be able to do that?
I'm sure that they spent decades, but they only used kids. And when the kid got to be about 12 or 13 years old, they wouldn't use them anymore.
Well, that also explains, we talked about some of your experiences in a prior interview about psychokinesis and the onset of puberty, and typically that's not typically, but a lot of times there's poltergeist phenomena.
Poltergeist phenomena, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily poltergeist. It might be that teenager that's manifesting the stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there's actually a researcher, his name's Steve Mira, he's over in the UK, where he's investigated apportations associated with poltergeist activity.
Oh, yeah.
And there was like, they had like a set of you could buy like a set of mugs. So he had this mug that was on site and another set of mugs back home or somewhere else. The mug disappeared and it reappeared somewhere else in the house.
Okay.
So what he did was he got one of the mugs as part of the set, had it chemically analyzed.
Yeah.
And he did the same for the mug that reappeared. It had a different molecular structure.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you explain that? There's something else weird.
You don't explain it, you accept it. Yeah.
And he also, you've heard of the skull experiments?
The what?
Skull, SCOLE experiments.
I don't think I have. No.
So after this interview, you should check it out. You can find it anywhere on YouTube. But back in the 90s, there was a group of researchers that were doing seances in a basement.
Okay.
And they slowly began communicating with these entities. And over time, and they were running these experiments where they would have sealed film, like old school camera film.
Yeah.
And these entities would put pictures on them. The film was not in cameras.
Yeah.
It was just factory sealed, verified that it was factory sealed, unopened. And then they would run and there would be, pictures of people and all sorts of weird stuff. But at some point, they have video of this entity they call Mr. Blue. It looks like a gray, except it's like blue and kind of has like a semi-ethereal look to it. But over time, it's like they again, I'm using a crude comparison. It's like they opened a portal because they couldn't stop these entities from kind of coming through. So they had to stop the experiments or just end the experiments because it got out of control. So I don't know if they've reported anything negative. For the most part, during the earlier years, it was universally positive. But they would ask questions. And, they ask 10 questions, they would get 10 answers. I think they did it twice. The second time, there would be disembodied voices that would give them the answers before they asked the questions.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they were playing with. I don't know if it had positive or malintent. But, I mean, it could have been their own consciousness. It could have been other entities. I don't know. But look it up. Like, it's...
Okay, I will. I wrote it down here. Yeah, and I don't remember the guy's name. Would put sealed piece of film, put it to his forehead, and a picture would appear on it. And do you remember that guy's name?
No.
Yeah, that was back in the 70s, 80s, somewhere around in there. I don't remember his name, but there was a lot of coverage and a lot of investigation. And he wasn't playing any tricks. It wasn't just, magician or anything. It worked. Yeah.
In your experience, how does the government handle these sorts of people and events? Because these things are happening. They're just not, they're like quiet down. Like they don't really make it that far in terms of the stories coming out and stuff like the Chris Bledsoe story is probably an exception to that. But for the most part, these things don't really get out. And I'm not sure why that is.
To sort of change Lucy Van Pelt's, in the Peanuts comic strip, to sort of change one of her famous quotes, "Nothing is so big or so important that it can't be ignored."
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right.
And her quote was that it can't be run from, but nothing's so big or important that it can't be ignored. So,
it fits. That definitely fits. So going back to this dream influencing, and again, I'm using influencing like that's it could also be dream communication is probably a less
Sure.
menacing kind of term. I mean, influencing's not that menacing, but
Well, there have been experiments of passing information from one continent to another doing that. And they did it one time in Morse code, and the message got through. So
interesting. Who did this experiment?
I would have to look it up. It was one of the researchers, I think, from Maimonides or someplace, one of the psychic researchers. Yeah, they would influence, not influence, influence, and do that. And somehow they did their sessions to mimic Morse code. And the end result was that the person over in someplace in Europe actually wound up writing out the Morse code, and it was the message that was being sent. Yeah.
Interesting. But what about dream influencing when someone's also sleeping? In other words, the influencer goes to sleep with the intent. I mean, I'm asking this question because I think we talked about this outside the interview of some of the experiments that I've tried. That it's impossible to tell if they've been successful or not, but there were definitely correlations.
Yeah.
Is that something that is a skill, and how rare is it? And is it something like, where would someone even learn how to harness that?
Well, I think Stephen Schwartz has a thing where he gives you a task, a remote viewing task. You lie down on a pallet with a comfortable pillow and you go to sleep for 15 minutes and you come back with the answer. The question has been asked and ignored of, well, can you get the task of doing something, active mental work, lie down on a pallet, go to sleep for 15 minutes, and then it actually comes to happen? And the supposition is yes, but I don't think even Stephen has tried that. I'm not sure.
And he would know too, because he's an expert on Edgar Cayce, right?
Oh, yeah.
What do they call it? The Dreaming Oracle, or what was it? I forget what they called him. But he would go to sleep and then he would make all these predictions.
Yeah, he's called the sleeping psychic. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't remember. We were at the American Institute, which has a lot of the Edgar Cayce stuff. And they have one of those card tables where one person sits on one side and does the cards, with the star and the circle and all this.
Oh, Zener cards?
Zener cards, yeah. And
I probably mispronounced it.
Is supposed to say, oh, it's a star, it's a circle, and all that. And so we sat down and tried it with one of the other. I was doing the cards, and the other one was a remote viewer from our unit. And she got like 20%, which is chance. There are only five different symbols.
Yeah, it's exactly equal to chance.
So right? It's exactly chance. And so then she and I made an agreement. I said, when I see the star card, I will picture myself being out at night, looking through a telescope at the stars and all that. When I see the plus sign, I will think of myself looking out through a window, and it has 4 panes in it. And when it's waves, I will picture myself on the ocean and, and all this. And we made a response for each of the 5 cards. And you do 25 of them. So there are 5 iterations of the cards, the total of 25 trials. And she was on the 24th trial and had gotten 24 of them correct. And now I wasn't given physical responses. I was just sort of getting a mental picture in my head. But she was picking up on those, and she was on the 24th one of being correct. And this woman that was in the room, for some reason, just ran up and said, "You're doing so well. You're doing so well." And so she missed the 45th one. If it hadn't been for that woman, she would have a perfect score. Yeah. But we just, from what we had learned in the remote viewing, symbols, numbers, letters, things like that, they're all just man-made things. They don't really have a meaning. But when you put a meaning to it, yeah, a remote viewer you can send messages. We were sending messages across the table. But yeah, it's not hard.
Interesting. All right. Any final words for the audience about remote influencing or dream influencing?
Yeah, the remote influencing, stay away from it. Okay? If you access someone, even for good reasons, you can get caught up in their mind and some of their personality, some of their problems, some of their illness can come back. If you haven't gone through the course and learned how to protect yourself, stay away from it. You can really do damage to yourself. It's not good. Stay away from it. Yeah.
All right, Lyn. As always, it's a pleasure, and look forward to speaking with you in the next episode.
Good.
About which
thank you for inviting me.
We'll figure out what it is in the next several minutes.
Okay.
So.
Good. All right.
If you enjoyed today's video, please hit like and subscribe, and also hit the notification button so you can be notified whenever I post new content. Thank you. Now, if you're enjoying the channel and you want to support it, there are several things you can do. In fact, there are 5 things you can do. The first thing you can do is just buy my books. I got plenty of books out in the market right now, and I would prefer that folks buy a book rather than giving me direct support, because they get something out of it. They get a real tangible product. The second way you can support me is by becoming a member on YouTube or becoming a patron on Patreon. And just go to either site and it'll explain everything. The third way you can support the channel is by checking out my merch site, which is here. There's plenty of stuff that you can get to support the channel. And I'd appreciate that you have it and can wear it. Not only do you help support the channel, but you also help promote the channel, and I appreciate that. The fourth way that you can support the channel, and this is really easy, is anytime you want to buy something on Amazon, literally just go to the description below and click on any link, literally any link. The channel gets a cut of that, and it costs you no extra money. You just go through the link, as I'm part of the Amazon Affiliates Club. The fifth and final way you can support the channel is through donations. Now, I don't prefer these because it's more of an expression of gratitude, but you don't really get anything out of it as a subscriber to the channel. However, if you decide to do these options, there's 2 options. There's Buy Me a Coffee, which is a separate site, and there's also, you can go through YouTube with either a super chat, super sticker, or a super thanks. Again, I prefer Buy Me a Coffee because that organization takes less money than Amazon does. But either way, I appreciate any support you are willing to give the channel. So thank you very much, and keep watching. I really appreciate it.